or the military experience, but to simply regard the sacrifice it requires. That regard runs deep in veterans themselves, and it would be only appropriate that our community, like other communities, erect a symbol to make the statement of our sincere appreciation for their bravery, courage, and sacrifice. I will admit, when it comes to honoring our veterans with a monument, I have few patience for unnecessary bureaucratic delay, while America's veterans are still dying on foreign soil. After 7 months of the Veterans Monument Committee we have no location, we have no place, not even to begin the process of designing and building our community's Veterans Monument. The committee could not even gain approval for the ground to be used. Remember, a Veterans Monument has unique emotional symbolism unlike any other place or thing on the ranch.
Wow. So this format is a life skills format, and I think just from what we talked about so far, Memorial Day isn't just for hot dogs, right? I mean, when we realize the price that's been paid, and while this was thousands of miles from here, one of the things I always say about Vietnam is the domino effect didn't happen. We can say a lot of things about Vietnam, but the countries didn't fall, and it was because of people like Dennis. So, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so let's kind of go back to kind of take a break from that for a minute. That's hardcore, isn't it? And again, Dennis is 19 years old, just a couple years older than you guys when this is going down.
That's the thing I always think about is, we live in Douglas County, Colorado. We're so far removed from all of this. We see military guys out and about here and there, but we often don't think about the sacrifices that they make for the rest of us.
Right.
This was a guy who came to our reunion. We have reunions. It started 25 years after we came back from Vietnam with the guys that are still alive. But this was at a place called Con Tien, and there's some pictures in here. And this guy I met him at the reunion. And Life magazine was a pretty big magazine at that time.
Yeah.
You can pass that around. And then I forgot to mention that I have some pictures of going into Khe Sanh, and I'll pass it around and you can take a look. A number of these people are dead. But here's the reason I brought this out now, to remind me. This guy is 17. And I asked when I came here to have this global map. Oops. You've all seen these, you know what they are. What a lot of people may not fully realize when you look at this is you see all the different colors for all the different countries, well over 100 of them. Those borders came about with the blood of boys. That's how they all came about, virtually. And girls, as it's turning out in our country. You may have to register for the draft when you turn 18.
Dennis, while you're up, where are you on the Khe Sanh combat base? They're on the. I'll let you explain both maps.
Okay. This doesn't show Hill 64.
Right.
But we were down in this area right here. And 861 was here, so we're down here. And that would coincide with this. And when we went into Khe Sanh, shortly after Hill 64, I guess I should explain Hill 64. Part of 19, my platoon was put on Hill 64. Here's Khe Sanh, just outside Khe Sanh, just outside this perimeter, there's a little hill here. It's only 64 feet high, they call it Hill 64, of course. And my platoon was put on there to dig in. We started to dig in, and then they removed us and put the first platoon on that hill. And shortly thereafter, within days,
Can I add something to that, Dennis?
Yeah.
So there's hilltops around this place. This was a long flat area where they could land aircraft.
yeah,
But there's hills around, and if the enemy was on the hills, they'd have the advantage. So what Dennis is talking about is there are Marines stationed, put out on these hills. So-
yeah, 881, 88 South, North, 861. Those were all occupied by Marines.
And I apologize for interrupting you. This is an important thing, especially as you all study history. When Dennis says to like Hill 881, the military uses topographical maps. If you guys have ever backpacked or whatever and that's where it has the lines for the elevation. And you know how they have, how tall the mountains are? Like in Colorado, the 14, the highest peaks all have, so it's kind of a military shorthand. Instead of having to name all these places, it's just the elevation of that hill. And something that Dennis just talked about, one of the battles that's going to occur during these months happens on Hill 64. And it's the only one that I'm aware of. And while I don't know everything about history, I do consider myself an amateur historian. Hill 64 is the only hill that I'm aware of that it had nothing to do with the elevation, actually.
Oh, is that right? I didn't
It
know
was
that.
64 men that were on, it was named,
Oh, for the dead.
well, no, for the men that were on the hill. And so I interrupted you, so you're gonna talk about Hill 64.
Yeah, they must have been meters too. This must be meters. Are they?
Feet above sea level.
861 is feet, not meters?
Feet above sea
Okay.
level. And I'll make a quick point about that. I'm sorry, I'm all geeked out on this stuff. It's feet above sea level, and Vietnam was on the coast. So we're at almost 7,000 feet here. So when we go to 9,000, it's only a 2,000 foot difference. You're close to sea level, not exactly. So these were prominent, right, in your area, Hill 881. So these are prominent
Oh, yes.
hills.
Mhm.
You might even call them mountains, because mountains are defined by being prominent in the area, but Hill 881, so.
So anyway, shortly after I came off of 64, they put the first platoon up there. And several days later, this speed caisson, Longvay, was overrun by the NVA. The Special Forces camp was overrun, and everyone was killed, and they used tanks. And we were concerned at that point whether the Russians were going to bring MiGs in because we knew there could be tanks coming up Highway 9. Highway 9 is a dirt road about as far as from here to that wall.
And this is the first time the North Vietnamese bring tanks into a battle. So can you kind of see the O'Schnikes factor kind of going up here?
So Hill 64 was then, after Longvay, the Special Forces camps were overrun, they killed everybody. Then they came here and they killed almost everybody on Hill 64. But there was a small contingent left alive in the morning when we went back and retook the hill. Hill 861 was nearly overrun several times. 881 north and south were nearly overrun as well. So it was very clear that the base itself could be hit soon, and that was kind of the concern you had.
Right. So Hill 64 is early January, mid-January?
Well, I can just tell by the death dates. Where's that thing that we were passing around? Yeah, you can tell. February 8th. See all the KIAs?
February 8th.
Yeah, all those are KIAs from that Hill 64.
So would you share your experience? What was your personal experience with Hill 64?
Well, just retaking it, and
Did you go up there first, though? Were you on Hill 64?
I was on there first, but they pulled our platoon off.
Yeah.
And then when they were overrun, we went, second platoon had to go in and rescue the remaining survivors.
So when we had breakfast, what Dennis shared is, Dennis's platoon, which is what, 40, about 40 men?
That's at full strength, but we never were at full strength.
They go up to the top of Hill 64, and you dig in. And the company commander, what does the company commander do?
He pulls us on.
And why did he pull you guys
They
off?
didn't think the lieutenant that we had was competent enough.
Yeah, because he was new. He was a newbie. So Dennis was up there. They pull him off, send first platoon up. The battle happens. There's 64 Marines there. You know, the North Vietnamese are sending up hundreds. What happens next to Dennis Sykes? So this is the next morning. So the battle starts about 4 a.m. So this is about 8 a.m. Then what happens?
I go back up the next morning and try to rescue the guys that were left.
Mhm.
And they have an ontos there that's firing. You know what an ontos is? It's like it's like a small tank, and it can fire probably 20mm cannon at some of the holes that are still held by the North Vietnamese. The North Vietnamese that weren't dead were praying, and they were, some of them in really bad shape. I don't know how much detail you want me to go in, but the books talk about how horrendous the battle scene was. I brought a book with me. This is, it's called Achilles in Vietnam. It's a really good book, and it shows a combat scene, and you can take a look at it. That's what Hill 64 looked like in the morning. It was.
So did you dig a fighting hole while you were up there?
No, we just took the survivors.
The first time that you went up there, though.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I dug. You had to dig in. And you learn to dig when you're a grunt. That's what you do, you know. And so we, right where I dug the hole that I was working on, is exactly where the North Vietnamese came up with their. It's called RPGs. They're like hand grenades that can be fired with a gun. They come in and blew up the bunkers, and if I hadn't been taken off there, I would be gone. That happened to me many, many times, as I mentioned to you. That's why I'm very lucky I lived.
Isn't that something? So his group goes up there, and when we say dig a foxhole or a fighting hole, is to be below ground. You know, you're safer, not safe, but safer from shells and bullets. So he digs a fighting hole. They get pulled off. The next group comes up, and then that where Dennis was is where they were attacked. And Dennis will share more about those. Just near death, you know, just whether it's fate or the hand of God, just for some reason, Dennis was going to make it through. So, all right, so back to some light stuff.
Great question.
Yes, yeah, Steve.
Yeah, I was curious.
Which is an example of something. You
Yeah.
draw your own conclusions.
So we're specifically talking about 4 or 5 months. For Dennis, it's not over when Khe Sanh is over. He has more things in Vietnam, but we're going to focus on Khe Sanh. So during those months, what did you eat while you're at the Khe Sanh combat base?
I wrote down all the things I didn't have.
That's what you focus on, right?
Yeah. What did I do with it? Yeah, here it is. I wrote a list of things it didn't have.